Thank you for giving me a platform to talk, and thank you to Interreg as well, one of the sponsors here. I'm going to talk a fair bit about our Interreg project, and this is really the culmination of many months working on that project, several years working on that project. I'll describe some of the work that we've done there, and also after my talk, I'd very much advise you to stick around. There's a gentleman called Gerald Cran, who's a orthopedic wrist surgeon who's coming on to talk after me. We've been working with Gerald for the past few years. And again, he'll give you a different angle on some of the work that we've been doing together in Interreg. But let's get back to my talk. As described, I'm the CEO of 3D LifePrints. We are a medical 3D printing company. I'll go on to describe exactly what that means and exactly our place within the market and how we see that this whole marketplace really works, and the way it works best, and our sort of take on it, and the way that we run our business. So let me first of all share my screen, and I'll take you through some of the interesting stories about 3D LifePrints here. Let me know when this is coming up. Hopefully, you should see that there. Excellent. So 3D solutions at the point of care. I will be referring to this term, the point of care, throughout this talk, and describing exactly what we mean by point of care, and the kind of services and the products that we supply at the point of care. But first, a quick description of me and the company. So I'm the CEO. I've been running this company for the past 6 or 7 years. Previously, I was a solicitor, as a lawyer in your terms, working in the City of London. I'm a much better CEO than I was a lawyer, I can tell you that. And the company that we run, 3D LifePrints, I'm a founding member of it. We only work in patient-specific medical devices. That's all we do. So therefore, we are working in medical device, we're working in anatomical models, surgical guides, patient-specific custom implants. That's the breadth of our work. And we deliver those devices, those products, as a service. And that's kind of the big change that I think you'll have between us and other companies that are in this marketplace. We try and see what we do as a service for delivering a whole package of things rather than just product. And the way that we deliver this service is split into 2 streams. Either one, this point of care that I'm going to describe to you, or secondly, remotely. And by remotely, I mean where we're not at the point of care. Some more detail on the company. As I say, we've been around for a few years now. We have 4 embedded facilities within hospitals in the NHS in the UK. We're just in the process of opening our 5th and 6th ones, actually. What that looks like is something within the walls of the hospital providing the service. We have a digital platform that we call EmbedMed. This is what controls the flow of information, controls the management, controls the ISO, controls the quality of all of our products and services. That platform reaches out to the surgeons at one end of it, and it touches our engineers, and it provides all the interactions in between along the way. As well as I said, working in these 4 points of care hubs, we call them, we also work with hospitals across the UK and Europe. We're always on the lookout for new customers and clients. So if you happen to be in touch with the hospital, you want some patient-specific medical devices, my contact details at the end, please do not hesitate to get in touch. We're still a small company. We need to make money. Next point on the list, there's one of the most important points. I'll come back to it again and again in this presentation. We are ISO 13485 certified, and we're ISO'd for our full end-to-end procedure. So that is everything from scan uptake at the start and instruction from the instructing clinician. That's an input form or a prescription under medical device regulations, all the way through to delivery of device. So everything in there is covered by our quality management system. And we are compliant for UK and EU regulations. So when the UK incredibly stupidly left Europe a few years ago, we decided to move our regulatory and quality systems up to European MDR levels rather than leave them at the dusty old levels that the UK is still using at the moment. That will change in a few years' time when the UK brings in the CEA mark and upgrades and updates the medical device regulations, but that hasn't happened yet. So we're still playing kind of on the old rules in the UK, which I think the old bad rules, honestly, and the new good rules under the MDR. That's a bit of a simplification, but you get the idea. Now, Interreg, as I say, we've been involved with Interreg for the past 3 years. It's been fantastic for us, really enjoyed it. met some really interesting people, done some really interesting work, and really, I think, moved the whole agenda for medical 3D printing forward a whole notch. We've been active, I think, in every single work package. We've been working on each of the projects within the overall project, and I'll talk mainly about work package 5, which is about surgical cutting guides. And I will bring you back to that in a few slides' time. On the right-hand side here, one of the questions you should be asking me is, what is that amazing anatomical model I can see on the right-hand side, Henry? Well, that is a model of a child's abdomen. This is a young girl called Leah Bennett, who had this enormous tumor that you can see picked out in kind of the translucent amber color here. This is her descending aorta running through the middle of this anatomical model. And before we made this model, the hospital, Alder Hey Children's Hospital, fantastic hospital, they weren't going to perform the surgery. They were just going to manage the tumor, let's say. By manage, I mean palliative care, really. But we produced this, we worked with the surgeons, took a long time, merged 3 different types of scan here. We merged MRI, CT, and PET scan, I believe. I'm not an engineer, by the way. In order to create this model, which they then went ahead, did the surgery, came out with an amazing result. This model is now in the Science Museum in the UK, and the story is all over the press in the UK. It got onto the BBC, I'm pleased to say, and it's all over the Alder Hey website. So great story for us, and the best story for the little girl. Leah, who we're still in touch with these days, we know the family really well now. It's a wonderful, wonderful story for the success of medical 3D printing. Okay, I'll just bring you on to the next slide. So the next slide, I unashamedly stole from Bridget DeVette from Materialize, and who I know are another sponsor of this event. Thank you, Bridget. I reference you at the bottom there. She gave a talk a few years ago in London, which I attended, really good talk about medical 3D printing. And she described how she saw the landscape of our marketplace and the breadth of it, how it describes what is happening. And again, like me, she puts the products into 3 categories: models, guides, and implants. And then she puts a line about where she thinks these devices should be designed and manufactured. And she put the line for guides just this side of, so on the point of care, on the hospital side. Now, what she means by point of care, she means the hospital makes them. Now, what I mean by point of care is slightly different to that, but let's just take it for now. It means the hospital, because this is her slide, not mine. So she thinks the medical device company, they should be making the guides, because they require regulatory compliance, they're technical, and they need scalability. I'd also just say that they're complicated things. They need to be CE marked, probably. They need a full technical pack behind the site, behind each one of them. And therefore, it's complicated to make guides. Now, I think we can move this line all the way over here. And when I move the line over here, I mean that we should be making patient-specific guides in hospitals. My only caveat to that is I think medical device companies should be making them in hospitals. And that gives guides all of the benefits of models. The fact that they're accessible to the surgeons, the fact that you need expertise in the creation, the flexibility of logistics, and the visibility of the data. These things are all great for patient-specific guides. Sooner or later, I'd like to put patient-specific implants in there as well, but that's not for today. Let's come back in a year's time and talk about that. Okay, so what do I mean by point of care when I talk about 3D LifePrints? What I mean is a different business model. I mean the company, that's us, we put an employee into the hospital. We put some hardware into the hospital. We put some software, in fact, lots of bits of software into the hospital. That employee, that biomedical engineer, works with the surgeons, and you get all the benefits of being on site. But at the same time, it's the company that takes the risk in terms of technology. It's the company that takes the risk in terms of regulations. It's the company that pays for things. What the hospital gets, it pays for the products. Why are hospitals buying 3D printers? I have no idea. Hospitals don't need 3D printers. They need the things made by 3D printers. So therefore, what I say to the hospital is, stop buying 3D printers, stop employing biomedical engineers, stop buying all these pieces of software that you didn't need at the start, and let the company do that. You just pay for what you want, which are the devices. Anyway, this is our model, and I'd like to say we've been pretty successful in the UK. We're now taking it to the US as well, which I haven't talked about in this slide. Would love to come to the EU. So if you're, again, a hospital that really wants to set up a medical 3D printing facility, don't buy a 3D printer. Come and talk to me, and let's talk about how we can run this for you. Okay, next slide. What we do well, and what is our USP? As I said, we're a service model, and we work with our dual point of care, which I've talked about a lot, or remote model. I'll talk a little bit more about the remote model, maybe now, in fact. So if you're a surgeon and you don't have a 3D LifePrints employee sitting in your hospital, can you still work with us? The answer is yes, of course you can. But you need to engage with us through our platform, which means that we will engage with you much like the other companies, Materialise being a very good example of them, who will engage with you over the internet through the platform. I don't think that's as good, but I think that in many cases, a lot of hospitals aren't going to want to dive straight into a fully fledged embedded point of care model, but they may be comfortable doing some remote work first. Next, we treat the products as medical devices. I think that should be a very clearly understood point. If anyone here on this call doesn't think that anatomical models are medical devices, anatomical models used for surgical planning, then come and see me afterwards. We can have an argument, but I'll probably win that argument. Okay, next, we concentrate on quality control and regulatory compliance. Sounds obvious, really isn't. There's still plenty of hospitals breaching the medical device, the MDR, the regulations in the EU, not in the UK because they don't apply, but in the EU, there's a whole chapter about in-house manufacture, and hospitals throughout Europe are ignoring it and continuing to supply 3D printed devices in-house. Now, I mean, obviously it's wrong, it's against the regulations, but most importantly, it goes straight to patient safety. Why are those regulations in place? It's not just to have some red tape, it's because these are medical devices that should be given the respect and the treatment they deserve. You don't expect your surgeon to be heading down to the local hardware store to be buying a drill. At the same time, you shouldn't expect a hospital just to bang together a couple of bits of wood and make a medical device either. And as part of that, we use validated hardware and software. That means we happen to use Synopsys, although obviously Mimics by Materialise is just as good, or in many ways better. And we also have validated hardware as well under our ISO. Skipping on to the next section, surgical guides. I said I was going to talk about this. So under the MDR, these are Class 2A custom-made medical devices. That means they attach onto the patient for a short period of time before they're removed during orthopedic or craniofacial surgery. They are complicated. They are complicated, especially if you're talking about surgical guides for, let's say, oncology. Resection of tumors is not something that should be undertaken lightly, certainly not without due regard to the quality of the products that you're designing and manufacturing. We have a controlled environment. You can see our head of engineering, Mike, in here in a funky black lab coat, manufacturing on our Formlabs machines using our Synopsys software. And he's in there making custom guides, surgical guides. And I'm pleased to say that we can get those guides through our system, meeting all the regulatory compliance within 5 days. We've actually even done it faster. We can only do it faster if you're literally on site. If we can get the scan on day 1 straight away, we can turn around the segmentation, get it approved on day 2, get the design approved and get it printing and then delivered. This only works if you're really, really slick, and that really helps by being on site. And lastly, again, I'll come back to the same point again, verification and validation. Surgical guides and anatomical models and custom implants are medical devices. They need a full set of validation documents with each device. Okay, what do we do in Interreg? This is a really cool device, cutting guide. Actually, this is a drilling guide for the scaphoid. Don't think it's been done before. At least I couldn't find in literature talking about it, at least not a device that can be used in this manner, minimally invasively. So this is for a procedure called the Brunelli Procedure. I'm going to let Gerald give you a good description of it. We did obviously the engineering part. Gerald provided all the genius surgery about it. But what Gerald told me was only top surgeons can do this. Surgeons who've had a lot of experience of this kind of procedure. And we really wanted to make it more accessible for other surgeons to be able to do this. The idea being that you can drill straight through the center of this small bone in the wrist. Therefore, you need to know where the middle of it. We can plan that digitally, and then we have this cool two-part device that actually has a clipping function to it that allows the K-wire to be run through the center of the scaphoid. As I say, the thing that's really novel about this is a guide that has a moving part that then clips into place, that then is stabilized after you've centered it. And obviously, we use the landmarks on the bone, and the surgeon resects the tissue around so it exposes the top end of the bone. Super complicated, and we've carried out our 2 clinical studies with this. There's definitely more work needed. This is not an easy guide. It's not one of the guides you see that people run off all the time. This is a real leap forward in terms of what guides can be expected to work on, but I think worth it. Again, I'm going to let Gerald talk a bit more about it. Don't want to steal his thunder. A little bit, tiny bit about the regs. As I did refer to, this is the rules on in-house between the MDD and the MDR. We're still stuck on the MDD rules, kind of, in the UK. And the thing I'd like to drill home to everyone here is they have made the rules for in-house manufacture basically as high as the rules for manufacture by anyone else. So if you're a hospital that's just plowing away making your own anatomical models and surgical cutting guides, just be aware you're breaking the law. And the other points about the rules in the UK, EU, a lot of you will know this, is to do with the change from having a blanket coverage of custom-made devices to now having a definition of patient-matched devices under the new rules, which means that, as I see it, as a kind of gross simplification, if you're starting from scratch, you've got a blank piece of paper when you design your device, that's going to be in the custom-made bucket. Whereas if you're starting from a template, then you're much more likely to be in the patient-matched device. There are more complicated rules to that, but that's my rule of thumb. Again, for the custom device, which is where all of our devices sit, you're not CE marking these. You need a prescription, and it's for an individual patient. You need a technical pack, and you need a QMS. And that QMS, in certain circumstances, does need to be an ISO. The Article 5 I referred to earlier, this is for your health institutions. The one that I found most interesting here is that no health institution can make a custom device if an equivalent device is available on the market. And they are, of course they are, we sell them. So let's see how many hospitals adopt this over the next few years. Okay, that takes me to the end of my talk. I hope you've enjoyed it. As I said, here are my our contact details. You can email me here, henry@3dlifeprints.com, and get in touch on any of our facilities. We love to hear from both academics and from surgeons and from hospitals. If you've got a project you want to work on, that's very much what we like doing. So I hope you've enjoyed the talk. I hope I haven't been too brutally honest about the market, but that's what you get. You get a lawyer talking. Okay, thanks ever so much, and I'd love to answer any questions.